This is the Venturing Angler Podcast. I'm Tim Harden. In this episode, we're chatting with R.A. Beattie of Off the Grid Studios and Beattie Outdoor Productions about fly fishing films and more. Let's chat with R.A. Okay, we're here with R.A. Beattie of Off the Grid Studios and Beattie Outdoor Productions. R.A., what did I say? Did I say R.A. Beattie?
Did you get my name correct? You did. Yeah, you did. Is this Timothy James Harden, the one and only? What's your middle name? What's your middle name, Tim?
Francis.
So I was way off.
Yeah.
Francis is a fantastic middle name, by the way.
Well, speaking of things that are fantastic, I think the Venturing Angler Podcast is one of the oldest fly fishing podcasts that's been around for lots and lots of years. In all that time, what would you say is your favorite episode?
You know, I think you're right. I was actually doing some research to prep for this conversation because I don't really venture into podcasts lightly, and I never really get on them without doing significant research, not only about the host but the podcast that I'm actually going to be on. Granted, I don't necessarily know how podcasts work, and I don't think I've ever been on one before. So I didn't answer your question. Probably my favorite one was your episode where you interviewed Will Arnett, and he was just fantastic. Honestly, like I never get tired of hearing his voice. It's lovely.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. Your Ozark, it was your Ozark. I think Bateman was on there too. They were doing a plug for their podcast, I believe, right?
Yeah, I wanted to help them out a little bit. And the only way for those who are listening to hear that episode is to listen to all the episodes and then click any ad you see anywhere.
This is the Spartless podcast, right?
Yeah.
I'm on right now. Okay.
That is a good podcast.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I realized that I just probably directed a lot of viewership away from the podcast. So for that, I apologize. And I'll try to not do that moving forward. I'll do my best.
Oh man. Well, I'm pretty excited about this. We've talked about it for years.
Yeah, me too. It's definitely gonna be the highlight of my evening. Being on this podcast.
Well, so far.
Okay. So no, I love your podcast. It is one of the oldest running. And that's a great plug. Yeah, you know what? And you've been hustling for a really long time in this fly fishing scene. And yeah, you've been doing a fantastic job for a really long time. So congrats.
Thanks. What other things do you like about, stuff I do?
About you? Well, I mean, your physique. I think I could probably win if we were to arm wrestle, but you're a strapping young man.
Thanks.
Yeah. So keep hitting it. Don't miss those leg days, though. Okay.
No, I can't miss the leg days. You actually haven't seen me since there's been some pandemic wait, but we were hanging out prior to the pandemic, and that was on a TV show project. But I think we'll get to that later.
Yeah, I think last time I actually was with you in person, I think you had bed bugs. Is that correct?
Well, I thought that I did.
You were wearing a marvelous pair of pants that had the Texas flag. They were made out of the Texas flag. I think you made them yourself in your hotel room after you burned all of your clothing because you had bed bugs. Am I wrong?
That is very close to what happened. So the story here is R.A. being, sort of like the Scorsese of fly fishing film.
Oh dear.
was contacted to to do Meat Eater's fishing show. And the
Yep.
crazy thing about that is at that time I was binge watching Meat Eater like crazy and also trying to figure out how to get involved in films and shows. And
Yep.
so all of a sudden I had like 2 or 3 weeks to do a lot of pre-production on a fishing show.
Yeah.
And at that time, Meat Eater was my favorite show. And so
Yeah.
every second of every day, I thought, I'm going to ruin my favorite thing if I make a mistake. And so by the
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
it was the night before, like you and everybody else was flying into town, and I think that day I had to go pick up the boat for Das Boat. I think the stress got to me, and I got to this hotel in Austin that was disgusting, and I freaked out, worried all night long, and then I think I like gave myself hives from stress. And so when I woke up in the morning
That
and
sounds
turned
about
on the
right.
lights, there were bugs everywhere. And then I
That's
had like
that's
this
yeah.
weird rash, and I'm like, okay, so now I'm gonna get in the production van and give the entire production crew bed bugs.
Yeah, bed bugs. Yeah,
Yeah, for the
which is not not the best way to start off
right.
a new TV show, but I mean,
For the entire show, yeah. So I drove to Walmart and I bought the
mm,
cheapest clothes they had, which was Texas flag shorts and a Johnny Cash t-shirt. Went to a laundromat and I think I washed everything.
yeah, twice.
Yeah, and then I let everything bake inside the
Mm.
van so that it would kill everything. Um,
You know, that's very thoughtful. And you're, I thought when we got to the airport and you picked me up that that's just how you rolled. And I was like, hey man, this guy's, it's not my style, but he's got his own thing and he's into it and he's confident. And so that confidence is, is key.
well, that situation is what ultimately made me famous because
Yeah,
in
infamous.
the intro you see someone with Texas flag shorts hitching a boat, and that intro,
Oh, that's right.
yeah.
How could I
So
forget? I mean,
because of that, Stephen Rennell and
that's
I
right.
are the only people in every episode.
That is some great fan trivia.
Yeah.
And, you think I would remember that since we stared at that intro, cutting that show for hours and hours and hours. But maybe my memory's not as good as it used to be. But I believe you. And for folks that are not familiar with what Tim's talking about, that show is Das Boat, and I think I'm going to give you some more props here, and then I'm going to not be nice to you for the rest of this call. But I think that was probably logistically one of the most complicated shows that you could conceive and try to execute. Period. I mean, I can't think of a show that'd be more challenging because typically if you're shooting a show, you can fly around the country, you can move your crews, you can do stuff like that, right? But this show was different. We had to take this horrible boat, not a horrible boat, it's a great boat, but it was in rough shape, and to have to take that logistically on the road, keep up with the schedule, get that thing moving around, and do that, through a pandemic. And I think you did a phenomenal job with the logistics because, yeah, I can't think of it being more complicated.
Thanks. I appreciate that. It was the one of those statements that you make that you regret was that after season one, when we had
Yeah,
more time, we were on a call with them in like February, and
yeah.
I remember saying like, "Oh, we've got so much time now. This is going to be easy."
Yeah. That's when you jinxed us and you destroyed season two.
Yeah, and brought a
Um,
pandemic upon the planet.
yeah,
Um,
that was your fault too. Yeah, the only way that show could have been more complicated is if maybe one of the co-stars was like I don't know, like an aged chimpanzee from like a zoo or something that we had rescued that was also in the van with us.
if that were a thing, I would have gone to the episodes.
Yeah, if that was the thing, it probably would have killed us. We probably would have made it into season two because those chimps when they get older, they got a lot of rage. I've been told.
Oh,
Anyway,
well, hearing your voice reminds me of the fact that for the first couple of years that you and I talked to each other,
Mm.
I was always tripping out because I had been watching your films for years. And so then it's,
Oh, really?
yeah. And so then I'm like, oh my gosh, here's the narration voice
Mm.
talking to me.
And then and you kind of envisioned like this like strapping 6 foot to like you know, very impressive figure. And then when we met each other, you're like, oh, he's like 4.5 feet tall and a little pudgy, and but still has great,
Yeah.
still great.
I don't think I was really thinking about your physique when I was watching the Sims Midwest tour.
Did I just make this really weird? I feel like I just made it weird. That's okay. Hey, you know what? Hey, no one's even going to hear that because you're going to go back in time, and with the magic of editing,
No,
that's
no,
going to end up on the cutting room
no.
floor.
I'm fully
Oh,
committed
really?
to not editing this episode.
That is, I did not sign. Look, I'm going to go look through my contract
I mean, I
before
will if I have
before
to,
we did
but
this.
like, come on, man.
I was
Like,
told I was told that I would have complete creative control, and you were going to actually send me the files, and I'd have complete creative freedom to come through and chop this thing as needed. So I'm going to be a little bit more careful with my responses. I just learned something.
well, we'll see.
Okay.
So when did I mean, I remember buying downloads from you. I think I remember
Did
buying
you? Oh, really?
DVDs. Yeah.
Did I ship them to you? Because the thing I used to do with the DVDs is not ship them all the time. Just kidding.
I don't
Kind of.
recall if I ever had DVDs, but I mean, when did things start for you?
Like
I mean, don't
when was
say
I
like 1982 or something, but
when was I conceived? I was conceived on a beautiful, glorious, cold winter day, January 11th, 1983. I'm a Capricorn.
no, that's when you were born,
Uh,
not conceived.
yeah, you asked when? Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. God,
So you would have been conceived in like
yeah.
March.
We do the math. I'm not a math guy. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so it's March. Beautiful spring March day. Probably good skiing. Okay, so your question was, I think you were asking more about the fishing stuff and not when did I enter consciousness.
Yeah, but the your background will is a factor.
Okay, so I was born and raised in the Rocky Mountains, and I came from a pretty serious ski family. So my grandfather was a big kind of personality in ski racing. He was a U.S. ski team coach, among other things. And yeah, pretty serious ski family, in the ski biz, and grew up in a small ski town, right? And so when I don't think there was a lot of pressure, but I definitely was skiing there's a lot of focus around skiing and that whole scene, and fishing was an interesting thing that kind of wasn't fly fishing was interesting. Now fly fishing is very, very popular, right? I mean, you see it, people, young people, all kinds of folks fishing, which is fantastic. Back then, it was really more obscure. People didn't really get into it, and it was also something that I could kind of do that was my own, and there was no pressure. There was no. It was very different from the ski scene, right? So I, started fishing when I was a little kid. We grew up on a ranch in the middle of nowhere, not a ranch, but a small property in the middle of nowhere with a river running through it. And our nearest neighbor was like 5 miles away or 3 miles away, and not a lot to do, right? And so fishing was just an activity and something we could do to pass the time. Fell in love with fishing. Um, Being influenced by the ski scene and snowboard scene and being in a ski town, you obviously get influenced by a lot of that media too, right? And you grow up going to Warren Miller. You're going to the theaters and you're seeing these epic ski films and snowboard films, and you see that media. And I think what happened was with fishing, there was this point in time, and I think it's probably I was a fishing guide. I started guiding when I was about 14 as an apprentice, and then working in fishing shops and doing all that stuff. And I guided through college and all that, whatever. But a lot of the young guides, I think we were looking at fishing, and we were looking at the media that was out there, and we were like, man, there's a pretty big disparity between the content that's created and what we're seeing and what we see on a day-to-day basis. And it was pretty natural to say, like, okay, look at what skate and surf and snowboarding and skiing did with media. And we just, we're kind of thinking like, well, why don't we do that? Like, why don't we have that? Why doesn't fishing have that? And we weren't, that thought process was not unique to us in any way. I think at that exact same point in time, there's a lot of different people that were having that same idea. And I think the evidence of that would be if you look at like the very first Drake magazine, 5 Minutes of Fly Fishing. So Tom Bai had already put out Feeding Time. Feeding Time was probably the first really solid representation of someone trying to do that that style of media, doing a little bit more storytelling, some lifestyle, and just kind of having more of that kind of, if you want to call it the skate or the ski kind of approach to the media. And so when Tom Bai came out with that first 5 Minutes of Fly Fishing, there was probably 10 filmmakers or so that kind of were trying to do that too. And so you've got, folks like Ben Knight and Travis Remmel with Felt Soul. You've got the AEG guys that were out doing their thing about the same time, Mikey Weir. There's a whole Brian Husky. There was a whole bunch of folks kind of that had the same idea, right? And so it was kind of this little explosion in a microcosm. I mean, we're talking really small, but you had this little explosion of media, which is really fun. And so people started kind of, trying to kind of tell the stories and show fly fishing in a way that it wasn't really happening. And I think it was also really, there's a crucial point in time. You got to remember that was also the explosion of technology in a lot of different ways. And so that's when you could get a Mac laptop. Granted, I think the first laptop we cut a movie on only had 20 gigabytes of storage, but it came with iMovie, right? And then you've got access to some of these cameras, like the Canon, was it the GL2, and some of these different cameras that were pretty affordable. Again, we're shooting on tape, but pretty affordable. And then you have editing software. We didn't have music. Music was a nightmare back then. You couldn't. Nowadays, you can get royalty-free music. There's hundreds and hundreds of different libraries you can access. They're really affordable. There's all kinds of music. But you got to remember, back in the day, like you couldn't find music, and we couldn't afford to license anything. So anyway, we just started making all these movies and documenting stuff. And honestly, we were just screwing around most of the time. I don't think any of us ever thought like this would go anywhere. It was fun to be a fishing guide and have a camera, and you'd work all day. And, at the end of the day, you'd be like, all right, we're going to go out and fish, and might as well bring a camera and see if we can get some cool stuff. And let's edit some of this stuff up. And yeah, I don't think any of us saw any of this going anywhere.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it could go anywhere, but I remember at the time, like especially with the AEG guys, the Trout Bum Diaries, I remember thinking like this. I'm watching finally what I thought fly fishing was in my mind. Like here it is.
Ah,
Like I
okay.
can't wait to show everybody. Like this is it. This is what I do. I didn't. I mean, I didn't take that trip, but
Right.
and I just thought like, because I felt like I was always trying to communicate to people what I was doing all the time, and
Yeah,
it
right.
always
And it's
seemed
hard to communicate.
lame. Yeah, like it always seemed like I was like doing something that was not cool, and I was trying to explain that it was cool to people, and then all those
Yeah,
videos
it's
came
hard.
out, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. See, this is what I do. This is what I do. Watch this now.
Well, I think that was the impetus for what we were trying to do, and that was the motivation. Is that, I mean, there's like clearly there's an aesthetic, and there's visual things that people are drawn to in fishing, right? That they get hooked on, and that's different for everybody. Some people, I mean, personally, I love like close up eats of in fish eating, and you can call it fish porn, right? Like those beautiful little moments and those little things that are hard to communicate and that are hard to explain to somebody. Yeah, you can capture them, you can show them, and then and I don't feel like it was really being done before. And I think a lot of that also had to do with the technology. And I mean, shooting fishing is it's very challenging, and it's a lot different than a lot of the other types of shooting. So imagine if you were doing if you were trying to shoot on film, imagine the expense. And you can't just run a film camera all day and like you can with digital. And so I think that allowed the fly fishing kind of industry, fly fishing media industry, or whatever you want to call it. I don't even know if it's an industry, but it allowed that to take shape and be a viable thing. Um, and then, the other thing is we just, the funny thing about fishing is everybody has a different approach to it, and it means something different for everybody. But for us, I felt like fly fishing was always really, really serious. And it was an art form, and it is an art form. And I strongly believe that. I think if you look at like river runs through it, like that's a beautiful, beautiful film. It's gorgeous. But it also, fly fishing was very, kind of like, I don't know a nice way to say it, but I mean, it was a little pretentious,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it lacked some of the fun and some of the elements and some of the comedy and some of the things that I think should be inherent to the process. Because at the end of the day, we're just fishing, and fishing's hard, and it can be good and it can be bad, but at the end of the day, it's just fishing, right? Like we're not curing cancer. It doesn't always serve to take it super serious. And I think that we liked having fun. And I think if you look at a lot of the early stuff that we made, green screen, stream of consciousness, Guiding Goes Gangster, like a lot of these little videos that we put together initially for the Drake Magazine Video Awards. We had a lot of fun with it, man. And we liked goofing around and just not taking it super serious. And I think that was an important part of our process because we just want to have fun with it. At the end of the day, this should be entertaining. It should be fun. It doesn't have to,
Yeah.
it's not that big a deal.
You've never been one of those filmmakers who is using filmmaking to show that you're cool or you're doing cool things.
Okay.
And
That was my main motivation, but just kidding.
well, I don't know if when you were talking a second ago, I had When Guiding Goes Gangster playing on mute while you were talking, and I don't know if my audio picked it up. I had to turn away from the microphone because I was laughing um, at them shooting the fish with the gun.
Oh, the tilapia. Yeah,
Yeah.
the tilapia, that native species of the South Fly. Yeah,
But
exactly. It was a good fish.
before I go more into the films, you
Mm.
mentioned your background, and I think it's worth mentioning if it's okay with you. Your name's Robert Beattie, and so is your grandfather, who is a notable figure on camera in the outdoor industry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, shoot. I mean, it's interesting you bring him up. I saw a picture of him today, and I was thinking about him. We're coming up on the 5th anniversary of his passing here before too long, and yeah, I was thinking about him. Um, yeah, that was it. He was a big figure in my life, and it was pretty fascinating. I mean, he did the coaching and the stuff with the U.S. ski team aside. He had a marvelous career. He was in the wide world of sports, and just some of the adventures that he was able to do. I mean, they sent him, for instance, they sent him to Antarctica one time, and they had this group of people who were doing a trans-Antarctic dog sled. I don't know. I don't think it was a race, but they were doing an expedition across Antarctica with dog sleds, and so they had brought in people from, I think, a number of countries, so like Russia, Japan, the United States, Canada. A lot of these different people had formed these dog sled teams, and so Wide World of Sports was there documenting this, and I think he spent like 180 days in Antarctica or something, and I remember him coming back, and he was a really humble. Unfortunately, I think we probably all have folks like that in our lives that I wish I could have gotten a little bit more storytelling out of him. He kind of liked to do his things and his accomplishments, and he didn't really talk about himself, and wouldn't talk about a lot of that stuff, unfortunately. But the pieces I would get, I'd go through his journals, and I'd see these photos of being in Antarctica, and or they'd be running these first descents of these crazy rivers in Africa, and people were dying on these trips, and like stuff was crazy. They're flying into base camp on Everest, and they were doing all this stuff, shooting this stuff on film, flying to New York and having to cut stuff up in studios and do voiceovers, and it left a pretty significant impression. I didn't really realize that until I was quite a bit older, because you grow up with it and it's around you, and you just assume that that's how life is, right? You don't know that it's different or unique or special when you're younger. But I don't think I had a specific moment where there was any point in my life where I was like, I see what he's doing and I want to emulate that, and I'd like to try to follow in his footsteps. It was just kind of like he I'd seen him doing these things, and so it was like, oh, well, that's possible. You can do that.
Hmm.
It was more like yeah. I don't know if I'm explaining that
No, yeah.
very well, but anyway, yeah. So it had a lot to do with my trajectory. I didn't really know it. It wasn't really premeditated. And it wasn't like, oh, he did this, I'm going to do that too. If that
No,
makes
but at
sense.
least I'm sure like it you know sparked your imagination about what you could do. You know, both my parents were teachers,
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, teacher.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, he was such a big figure, and he was so much larger than life, and he was so successful in all these different ways. Like, I don't, I maybe in my brain, I just didn't think I could replicate that or even would try to. But I think, yeah, it definitely showed me, if you want to do something, you just go do it. You know,
Yeah.
if you have an idea and you want to make it happen, then just do it. I think that's the interesting thing, right? I think in life, a lot of people, they have things they want to do, they have ideas, aspirations, and I think that the hardest part is just saying yes to them, and just going for it, because there's always a thousand reasons why you can't, or you shouldn't do something, right? Or you look at all the reasons. Oh, this is hard. It's expensive. It takes time. This and that. There's a lot of reasons why you're going to fail, but you don't focus on any of that. You just have to say yes to something, and then you just work your ass off, and you got to grind it out and figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, I hear that, and I was actually thinking about that over the weekend. I drove to, I guess it was Monday. I drove to Jackson
Mm.
Hole, and someone was like, "Wow, that's wild." And I'm like, "Is it? Just a 4.5 hour drive." And
Yeah.
I hear that a lot from people. Like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy! You went here or there," and I'm like, "You went to Disney World? That sounds like intense. Like, I don't think I
Right.
could pull
Right.
that off." Um,
Right.
And so, a few years ago, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I don't remember what happened. Someone maybe messaged me randomly on Facebook or something and said, you know, they had just gone through something traumatic or death of a father. Yeah, it was death of a father, and
Mm.
her father had taken her to like West Yellowstone or something. Um, and she wanted to. She had really hadn't done much since, I think, and she wanted to honor him. And I was like, well, you know, go there. And she's like, well, it
Yeah.
seems hard. And I'm like, no, it's really easy. Just go. And she did.
Yeah.
And it was
Good.
this thing. Yeah. And so, the Trout Bum Diaries came up too. These guys just went, right? to
Yeah. Yeah.
Argentina. And at the time, it seemed crazy. It was
Yeah.
before things really developed in travel. And these guys just kind of loaded up the car and, um,
Yeah. They said we're going to go for it. We're going to go to South America for a couple months and live in a van and sleep in the dirt, and we don't have any money, and we're going to figure out how to do it.
yeah.
And I think that's how, and that was kind of the interesting. I think that's kind of the beautiful thing about the early days of fly fishing media. Not that it's stark, like it's really that different these days. I mean, the principal challenge with the fly fishing media in general is that it's expensive to create,
Mm.
and there's not a lot of money to make a lot of the projects, and the quality is getting higher and higher and higher, and the bar is getting higher, and the standards are increasing. But it's always been the financial side of it has always been the really challenging part for, I think, most of the filmmakers who started out 20 years ago, or however old we are now, 15 years ago, whatever. But I think that's the really cool thing about it, is that we didn't have a lot of money, and we really had to get scrappy. And so we had to figure out, and again, like when I talk about like, oh, we don't have music, we don't have this, like we don't have that. Instead of like fixating on all these things that we can't do and the things that are challenging financially, that force us to be creative, right? And you have to figure it out and say, okay, if we don't have access to this music and we can't afford it, then what are we going to do? Well, we might have to play music and figure out how to record our own stuff. We might have to do this, we might have to do that. So the desperation, I guess, on the budget side creates some really interesting creativity. And I think you can look at a lot of our early work and it's rough. Like I watch some of the stuff now. I'm like, that's rough. That audio is terrible. Like, oh, that color work. I don't even think we knew what color work was in the beginning. Um, a lot of stuff was really rough, but those days, like I love the grittiness and I love the realness in a lot of that early content when it's not super polished and it's not, doesn't feel as commercial, maybe.
And people talk about those
Mm,
videos a lot. Um,
huh.
Even sometimes more than what I think are unquestionably better films.
Sure.
People still talk about like especially the humor in the early ones. Um,
Yeah.
it, did you was your goal just to make audiences laugh? What, I mean,
So you know what? So where I learned a lot of that. And so when I started getting pretty serious, I shouldn't say serious. When we started to kind of figure out a little bit of what we were doing, I was in college, and so I had some really good buddies in college, and my friend Mike Cuzio, amazing, amazing, amazing skier, telemarketer, just incredible outdoorsman, phenomenal photographer, just incredible eye. Um, One of the funniest people I know, one of the smartest, cleverest. I mean, just smart. Brilliant people that I know. And so he was making a lot of ski stuff, and they were what they would. What was the name of that? The Cold Smoke Awards, maybe in Montana. Yeah. So what they would do is they would cut these ski films, and it would be just exactly what you think it would be at the end of the '90s. Lots of awesome aerials, riding on rails, all that kind of stuff, right? All that ski porn. But what they would do is they would do these hilarious bits, and they would just do the most creative, off the wall, hilarious shit. And they would always put those in, and kind of slide those into their film festival entries. And then they would leave school. We were in Washington. They'd leave school and like drive to Montana and like do this big film premiere, and they'd win some awards. Um, and so I learned a lot from them. And so I started cutting a lot of stuff when I was in college too, not fishing stuff too. Like we made some just ridiculous short films, because we had short film festivals in college, and so we would make these film festivals, these entries. And I think one of them was a guy who oh god, he starts the main character has a girlfriend, but he starts having a secret affair and falls in love, and has this like this love triangle. But the love triangle is with his Nintendo 64 or something. And there's all these hilarious scenes where he's like, anyway, it's and it was a horrible film probably, but it was really funny. And I remember when I showed that, like seeing that on in a film festival, and seeing the audience erupt with laughter, and that sensation, when it's really hard to explain. I mean, I think showing your content in front of an audience is terrifying. I You're a little bit more removed, I guess, than doing stand-up comedy. It's not that vulnerable, but you're still pretty vulnerable when you're showing something that you creatively think is important and you like. And that's it's a little scary that when you first start showing that to audiences, particularly if you're trying to do comedy, because if it falls flat, you're failing in front of these people, and it's a hard experience to explain. But when people laugh and it's a huge success, like that feeling and that whole thing is intoxicating, and like it's really fun. and it's a great feeling to like make people smile.
Mm.
And I think that that's where I learned some of that stuff, and we started to cut our teeth on some of the comedy stuff was in college, and then we brought that to we bring that to fishing, and we'd say, okay, like I love stream of consciousness. I have a friend of mine that I used to guide with, and he would just talk nonstop. He'd be in the boat, and he's just always talking. And I was like, man, this guy, like his internal monologue in his head, even though he's actually saying it, and you can while you're fishing, and you're like, hey, buddy, like that's enough. Like, but I was like, man, if we could have inside of a guide's head that internal monologue while he's rowing a river, and like the stuff that he's thinking about, like that would be great. And I'm sure every guide, because it's all inside jokes, right? It's all the stuff that we deal with as a guide. You're like, the fish comes up and crushes the fly. You're like, set the hook, huh? It wasn't me. I didn't have one. Like those kind of moments, like that's the things that we all share as guides, and to have like it's a little bit inside baseball. And I think that was kind of the fun for us was like, it's kind of jokes that if you were a guide, if you're on the inside, like you got it, and that was the fun part. Not everybody got it, but that's what made it fun.
At,
Anyway.
at what point did your films see? This is where I sort of lose the history, and I think it's because this is the period of time when I like vowed to quit fly fishing and never be involved in the industry again. So I walked away, and then I came back, and then it seemed like cool stuff was happening, especially with film. When did this? How and when did this evolve into films that were in the fly fishing film tour?
I think what we oh man, I don't know if I'll get the history right here, but I think all right. So we were making short movies and stuff like that for the Drake magazine, 5 minutes of fly fishing. That was every year, 5 minute piece, boom, have it funny, yada yada. So we did that for a while. We had cut a couple different films, just independent stuff, funded ourselves. Is a lot of it was just terrible. And I was working in so I was trying to start a guide operation in Eastern Europe in Slovenia. I'd gone over there and fished and on this river, and I was like, this place is amazing. This is the most beautiful country I've ever been to. Like this river is insane. And I'm sure people are pretty familiar with Slovenia now, and they know the marble trout and the Socha River and all the beautiful things in that country. But at that point in time, Slovenia wasn't even in the EU yet, and it was remote and unknown, and it was awesome. And so I went over there, fell in love, started guiding, trying to put together a guide operation. I'd take clients over there, this and that, and as you would expect, brought my camera and was filming stuff. And so I put together a movie there. We had shot, I had shot a piece in the Amazon, and we had put that piece. I think the Amazon piece was the first one that was our first film tour entry, the first year, maybe. When that piece came out, that Slovenia piece, a gentleman by the name of Mark Rutherford, who's a very, very, very long time, super experienced guide in Alaska, saw that film and called me and was like, saw what you did, really cool. I do wilderness trips to Alaska and really, really remote stuff. He goes, I've got a first descent river and I'm going to go run this river. And it's never been run from top to bottom. And I'd like someone to document it. And do you want to come with me? And I was like, sounds awesome. So, and also sounds super sketchy. But yeah, so, I think I saved up all my guide money and maybe we scraped together like $1,000 or $2,000, maybe somehow from a sponsor. I don't know. And then we went off and he and I disappeared into Alaska for a month and we did this first descent river and started shooting all kinds of crazy stuff in Alaska. And I think that was probably, yeah, that little time period when I had knocked out a piece about Slovenia, the Amazon, and Alaska, where I was like, I really like this. I don't think I can make a living doing this, but I like this and I really want to keep doing this. And so then the really challenging thing, man, is that I keep talking about the financial side of it because it's always been a constraint in the media side. Um, I compiled a lot of stuff and I put it onto a DVD called Nervous Water. And I had released a couple DVDs before that. And I think I probably sold, like 7 DVDs. I mean, it was dismal. But when we put together Nervous Water, that was a collection of a bunch of different films, a bunch of the short films, 4 or 5 different long films, put that thing together. Angler's Book Supply, Mark over at Angler's Book Supply, believed in me and was like, yeah, man, let's give this thing a go. We'll carry this title for you. We'll do distribution for you. And I was like, distribution? I was like, I don't know what that word means, but let's do this. And I saved up. Yeah, I think it's saved up a bunch of money, guiding, and I called a company and like figured out how to make DVDs, which I didn't know how to do. And then they shipped me all these boxes of DVDs, and I was like, oh, this is terrible. I'm not gonna sell any of these. And Nervous Water crushed it. I remember I couldn't believe it. I got a phone call, from Mark, and he's like, we sold through all those DVDs. Hmm. And my jaw dropped, man. I was like, you did what? I'm like, wait, we sold these, we're going to make a profit. Like, wow. This might be commercially viable. And he's like, yeah, we're going to need to order more. And I was like, okay. And so we started selling DVDs, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, there's a little bit of daylight here. This might be viable. We might be able to do this. Like we could, this might be something we can actually do now. And it was like that for a little bit. There was a period of time when DVDs would sell really well. And then overnight, all of a sudden one day we woke up and that whole model crashed, obviously. I mean, people don't even know what DVDs are anymore, but yeah, so and then that whole thing collapsed. But I think that was a pivotal moment because we saw some commercial success. We're like, this is something we can actually do, and not just pay for it on a guide's budget, and like slap it together.
Is Mark Rutherford Kate Rutherford's father?
Yeah, exactly. So, and cool. Kate Rutherford is, I don't know, probably not probably, she's one of the best climbers in the world. She now works for Patagonia, and she's phenomenal. She's incredible. And it was really, really cool. I got to spend a lot of time with Mark and Kate up in Alaska. Actually, one of my favorite short films we made for the Drake a long time ago. I can't remember the year. Was a very short piece just about the relationship between Kate and Mark, and how it was this very pure thing about a father watching his daughter grow up and be proud of her, of the woman that she became, and just the connection and how he valued the time that he got to spend with her. And it was meaningful to put together, because I really, really adore those two and that family. And so to be able to capture that moment and show something that I thought was kind of real, and not, just a commercial piece, was special.
How did you first get connected with Tom By and the Drake for those 5 minutes of fly fishing videos?
Oh God, I think oh God. So when I cut the Slovenia film, and I burned it on DVDs, like at my parents' house, like on their computer or something, because I don't even think I had a computer at that point that could burn a DVD. But anyway, I made like 20 copies. And I remember like handwriting the name of it. Like I wrote this crappy letter. And I think I just went to all the companies that I really liked and all the media I really liked. And I dropped the letter and put it in there, and I mailed it off, and was like, well, see you later. All these old little bottles floating out in the ocean. Let's see what comes back. And it was pretty funny because, I mean, here's what the early days of fly fishing media and this fly fishing film thing were so wild. So you got to remember, this concept and like what we were doing didn't even exist. So people would get and be like, wait, what is this? It's a movie about fishing? They're like, yeah. And I remember, I'm not going to say the name of the brand because it's embarrassing, but I had a brand the guy called me up and goes, I got your DVD and it's interesting. He goes, but it's too short and it's too short and like da 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 and there's no this and that the other thing. And I was like, it's too short. And I was trying to rack my brain. I'm like, well, it's 40 minutes long. And I was like, it's really long and it's drawn out if anything. So what is he talking about? And I put the DVD in to watch it, and I noticed that the menu came up,
Oh,
and there was a minute and a half menu that would play that had some audio and just a bunch of clips, and then there's a little play button in the bottom. And it dawned on me that this person had put it in and didn't realize you had to hit play and was just watching the menu.
oh,
And I was
that's
like,
hilarious.
oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, to answer your question, Tom By, so Tom By got back to me, and he was like, "Oh, this is awesome, man," and da 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 da. And we're gonna do this festival thing, and
and he was just
this and
fresh
that.
out of like snow sports, right?
Yeah, I mean, Tom had a long stint in powder and the whole history of the ski stuff, and then we got together at some point. I can't remember what it was. I think I said, "Oh, we were having like I think we were just having a big ass party in Colorado, and I had a bunch of people coming up, and I was like, just a bunch of fishing bums, and we were doing a casting competition and getting drunk and whatever." I think I sent Tom a note. And I was like, "Man, you should like come hang out with us and like come to this party." I was probably 20, but I wasn't even old enough to be having a party. And he replied. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'll come up." And we're like, "Wait, what?" Because Tom, I mean, you got to remember, like for
Yeah,
us, like Drake was like,
yeah,
holy shit, right? Like if you're a young fishing guide, you're like 19 or 20, and you read the Drake like cover to cover, upside down and backwards, and like it's all you think about
and it was
is
cool.
fishing, and it was so cool. And I was like, it would be like meeting like freaking like you know your like Jimi Hendrix or like whatever, right? Your favorite musician. It was like, oh my God, Tom By's coming. What are we gonna do? We can't serve him this beer, this garbage beer.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so he came up and we were like running go. I think we were crashing go karts and like getting out of control and being 20. And Tom was great. We had an awesome time, and I was like, this guy's awesome. We're gonna be friends forever. We're gonna get matching tattoos, and we've got to just and honestly and Tom's been phenomenal. He's such a great dude, and we've had so much freaking fun over the years. Oh yeah, and then Tom and I. I was like, Tom, we're gonna go shoot a movie about false albacore in um, North Carolina in October. You should come with. He's like, okay, I will. And we're like, what? You're gonna come with? Yeah. We're like, And then so we actually that was a terrible little film too. That was a good little film. Bird Chasers. And so Tom came down, and we're like, we got Tom By on our trip, and he's like on camera. And anyway, it was really funny, man. Those early days were really funny.
One of the stills from that Albie film was like the background on my computer for a really long time.
Oh, you just pirated that and took it from us then?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I guess
Okay.
that's. I mean, I
I'm just kidding. No, we used to give that stuff away too. We used to give away like, oh my god, I just remember the website we had back in the day. It was so terrible. I mean, our current website is pretty terrible too. But
not for long.
no, just kidding. I'm gonna build it tomorrow. Don't worry.
Well,
Um. Anyway, sorry.
no,
I digress.
no, that's funny. I I love Tom By. I don't know him that well, but every single interaction I have with him is hilarious to me. Um,
Yeah. Good times, dude.
including this is several years ago. He said something like, "Hey Tim, a lot of people go to the Venturing Angler. I don't know why." And I was like
That's
waiting for him
great.
to be like, "Just kidding." And he never did.
Yeah, you're like, anywho, okay, moving on. Awkward. No, he's great, man. And honestly, look, and look, no joke. We are so freaking lucky to be able to do the things that we were able to do and to pull it off and to be able to make this content. And there were so many people that made that happen, particularly for, I mean, we were young, man. We were 18, 19, 20, whatever. Like we were young. And people like, you know what? the folks at Sims stepped up back in the day and took care of us for a long time. Tom Bine, the Drake, the fly fishing film tours, all the folks that have hustled to make this thing a reality has taken a tremendous amount of blood, sweat, and tears and passion to make it happen. And they opened the doors for young people and really supported us. And I think that that's really, really cool and really important because it's tough when you're young to get started and to get things going. And there's a lot of people that really, really, really worked hard to make sure that all of us, like anyone that's been doing this for a long time, you know, yeah. So anyway, a lot of gratitude to the fly community and the fly industry and the people that gave us opportunities. You know.
I do want to talk about the evolution of your films and you know where things are now. Especially, I do want to talk about this exciting new platform where your films could be watched. But before I get to that, something that you did, something that you did say to me a year or two ago was, and I'll bring it up now because you're talking about people, is that your experience in the fly fishing industry has been valuable to you in particular because of meeting certain people. Who are some of the
Yeah.
people, you know, through your career that have had an impact on you?
Oh man, that's a really tough question to ask because
I know
the
you're going to
list
think of,
is
yeah.
well, the list is really long. And when I say that there's been a lot of people that helped us over the years and got us through year by year by year, like it's no joke. It's taken a village to get us collectively, you know, through all this and so I'm really grateful, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but I think that yeah, I think the gift, you know, the reason that we do this and the real gift in any and it should be in any endeavor that you do and anything you pursue in your life is it's not about it's not about the success and this and that, or you know, it should not be about the financial, like any of that kind of stuff. Your motivation should be really trying to figure out what you can the folks that you can meet and the relationships you can build along the way. And so the remarkable thing, you know, in a couple weeks, I'm going to turn 40 and I'm going to go down to Holbox in Mexico and go spend it with one of my, well, he's like my brother, like one of my best friends in the entire world. His name's Sanfley, and he's just a remarkable human being. And he's an incredible fisherman and a guide, but more importantly, he's just salt of the earth, just one of the best human beings on the planet. And he lives in a tiny little fishing town on a tiny little island in the middle of Mexico. And he and I are, you know, like I said, I mean, he's like my brother. I mean, he named my daughter. Um, I love him. I love his family. Like they have, and that's one example of I would never. There's no way that we would ever know each other, and that we would never develop this amazing friendship and all the value, you know, that he's brought to my life, just with his friendship. Like I would never have that if it wasn't for this trajectory. And I think the wildest thing is to look at every project and to see those relationships that have come out of those things, and they all build they all build on themselves over time, right? Like Mark Rutherford, you know, when I was younger in Alaska, saying, you know, why don't you come up here? I'm going to give you a shot and let's make this film. And then I get to meet his family and and you know, they become part of my family. Like I consider him like a father figure in a lot of ways. Like the doors open there and all the relationships there that grow are phenomenal and beautiful. And then I think about Mike Dawes and meeting Mike Dawes. Mike Dawes is one of my favorite human beings on the planet. Mike from Jackson. You know, Mike opened the door. I can't, God, when do we? Oh, so Mike was like, hey, we're going to do this crazy expedition to this place called the Scorpion Reef in Mexico. And it's going to be nuts and it's going to be fun. And you should come. And I'm like, okay. That's where, I mean, that's where I met Santley. That's where I met Jose. Like, that's where I met Bear Holman. You start to think about all these people that have become just the foundation of my family and like my friends. And every experience like that, and you keep meeting those people, and like those are the things at the end of your life. I think that's what you know, you're not going to remember this and that, the other thing, or, you know, oh, did we lose money on this project, or were we successful here, or was that a flop? You're not going to remember any of that. It's the people and the relationships, and that, like, that's what you get to take away. And that should be the most important thing with anything that you do in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the
So
answer
that's what
was me,
fishing
but
is.
those guys sound cool too, I guess.
Ah, you were. Oh,
Just
Tim.
kidding.
See, I
I'm just.
told you I was going to leave somebody out. See, I wouldn't know
I'm
you.
kidding. I'm kidding.
I wouldn't know that you love, you know, wearing shorts with state flags on them. I mean, we wouldn't know any of this stuff if it wasn't for fishing. So, yay, fishing! Thank you.
Would you say so? When was that scorpion expedition? When did that take place? Was
You
that
know
like,
that I can't even remember. Like, I can't
yeah?
even. I don't even know what year it is right
Well, it
now.
made it to YouTube 10 years ago. So
Scorpion. Shit, man, I don't know. Scorpion was probably 10 years ago,
okay. Would you
12 years
say
ago.
was that trip a turning point trip? Do you think for your career?
That trip was wild. That was a tough one. It was really cool. I think that one, like I said, I mean, things start to build on other things, and so we went and did the Scorpion, and we're like, that was great. That was super fun. Then we That's fine. Hold on, I have a call coming in. Can I take this call during this podcast? Can I put you on hold?
Yeah, no problem.
I'm just kidding. That was Ryan Bucola, who was
Oh,
actually one of the people on the Scorpion trip, and he has a beautiful mustache. But I'm not going to take his call.
he's also in Next Gen.
He's in Scorpion. You want to know a little fun fact? He's
Yeah.
in Scorpion. He's in Corazon. He's in Alaska Frontera Norte. He's
Wow.
in uh, Next Gen. Debbie Does Dallas. No, wait, that's a different movie.
Is he in
He's in. Is he what?
is he in Carpland?
He's in Carpland. God,
Oh.
you're better at this than I am. You remember all this stuff. Um, yeah. So yeah, that was a turning point because I think in a lot of ways that was kind of the creation of, not that we have like a crew or whatever. That sounds really weird, but you know, that's where, yeah, we went and did that piece there. And we're like, well, that was really fun. Where else can we go? Oh, let's take Sandflea from Mexico and let's take him to Alaska. Oh, and we actually took him up there and we made him do that river that we did the first descent. Um,
Oh, cool.
Probably the worst portage, definitely the worst portage I've ever done. Um, yeah, I took those guys on just a miserable death slog in Alaska, but yeah, so yeah, that was a turning point, I think, in a lot of ways, because it did turn into a lot of other projects, and a lot of them with that crew.
I need to stop pretending like I know so much about you because then on future podcasts, the guests are going to be like, why didn't you prepare for my podcast? But
Well, I'm just glad you remember them all. I don't even remember half of these movies
I've
anymore.
been a fan, and it seemed like with those trips there was sort of a turning point. With
Mm,
it became more serious. There were substantial, exploratory expedition type trips.
yeah.
And then he started getting awards and recognition and I think for me as somebody who's always been interested in destinations and that
Mm,
exploratory spirit, you were one of the main people
yeah.
bringing that to the screen.
Yeah, that exploratory stuff was exciting, and I think what changed there a lot too is we started working. I mean, I'm not trying to do shameless plugs, but I think Orvis really stepped up. I don't think, I know they did. You know, they really stepped up over the years in supporting us. All the folks at Orvis have been amazing, and that helps too, because again, this stuff, we got to figure out how to put this stuff together, and they had a lot of confidence in us. I mean, honestly, I've never wanted to do anything that was a slam dunk and was easy, and that, so there's always inherent risk. I think an example of that would be when we wanted to do Carpland, and we're like, okay, we're gonna do a movie about carp. It's gonna be all about carp. It's gonna be amazing. We're gonna go out of the country and film carp, and like that was, I mean, catching carp is super trendy now, and it's cool. Um, it wasn't cool back then. And I think a lot of companies would look at that and be like, yeah, no, we're good. No, we're good. We're going to pass on this one. We'll let that call go to voicemail. But, they stepped up and like, yeah, okay, well, this could be weird, but let's see how it goes. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, and we have done a lot of destination stuff. I'll tell you, I mean, I got to be honest, I've never been like super, super into I think fly fishing media got off track a little bit for a while, in that it was this race of like, oh, this hasn't been done, this hasn't been done, this hasn't been done, this hasn't been done. And I think it went a little too far that way for a while. Um, and got a little too far away from some of the storytelling, which is fine, right? Like I think it's come back around, but I don't think we were ever driven. We never had intent. I don't think it was like, oh, we're gonna pioneer, where everything we do is going to be a place where no one's been, and we're going to pioneer this and go to here and like try to find these things that no one has ever seen. I think it was more just general curiosity, and I think that all anglers have that natural desire to kind of see what's over the next hill.
Mm.
What's over there? What's this? And so I think it was more just curiosity. You hear about a new species, and it's like, oh wow, well let's go check those things out just because they're cool.
Right.
Let's see what they look like.
How did how did you make your way to Dubai? I
Um,
mean, plane,
on
obviously
on on
airplane.
on Emirates, in the back, in the way back of the Emirates flight, not in the front. No, we that was really cool. So that was Nick Bowles, um, from South Africa, lives in Dubai, runs Ocean Active. Nick really, really helped make that whole thing happen and connected the dots with our team. And that was a cool project. It was very, very interesting. We were working with Dubai Tourism, which is a government-run tourism bureau, um, operating on the other side of the world. Pretty complicated in a lot of ways, but also really, really, just a great experience. But yeah, Nick did a lot of work to make that happen and to get us over to Dubai. And then, and then we worked on that project. That was, just a fantastic opportunity to go to the other side of the world. And again, it's not a place where you're discovering or anything like that. I mean, it's Dubai, and you're fishing in downtown with the skyscrapers in the background, like, but to go to a culture that's vastly different from ours, and to be able to integrate into that culture, and really kind of get to see it, is really cool. And I think that's probably the other gift that this whole fly fishing media stuff grants you, is that when you go to a place and you're working on a documentary, you're working on a movie, it's kind of cool, because if you're a tourist and you show up in a destination, you see one angle, and you see the angle that you're being fed as a tourist, right? Um, you're not seeing the local experience, you're not seeing the behind the scenes, and kind of what makes a place tick. If you're making a movie and you're doing it correctly, you want to get behind the scenes, and you want to really dig into that culture, and you want to see what it's really like. And the cool thing is, when you're making a movie, those doors open. And so in Dubai, they opened all those doors for us, and we got to really see, I mean, we're getting on fishing boats, like commercial fishing boats, and meeting these commercial fishermen. This is how they've been doing it for thousands of years, these different fishing techniques. And you're working with these folks. Again, you'd never meet these people. You would never, like, how would you get on a commercial fishing boat in Dubai and learn how, they've been fishing for hundreds or thousands of years. Like, anyway,
That's
so that's
cool.
a gift that,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, and you've seen that too, right? I mean, because, I mean, look at the, look at the productions, all the stuff that we did with Das Boat and going to all those places and meeting those people and, you know, going behind the scenes into their life and seeing what their life is like on a daily basis. Like it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. I don't remember where I first started seeing your films. I think I sent away for one. Um,
Uh,
I, I I believe I ordered a DVD. I know at one point you had I think it was maybe some spay classes that I downloaded.
oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sketch Revolution.
yeah, exactly.
That was
Um,
cool.
but you're now, you've had your films on the big screen on film tours.
Mm.
You mentioned the DVDs earlier. You're embarking on something pretty exciting right now. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, let's talk distribution, shall we? Okay, so yeah, we talked a little bit about DVD stuff, right? And so back in the day, we'd consolidate all this stuff and try to put them on DVDs, and we'd wait till we have like 10 films together, and then put them on a DVD and try to get them out to people. Then we worked for a long time. We had a lot of stuff on Amazon, and so we had almost our entire library was on Amazon for a long time, and then you know that that kind of ran its course. And so we have this pretty substantial library. I mean, I don't know what we probably have 20 or 25 longer films, 30, 40, 50 shorter films, like all this content. And so we're trying to figure out how do we make this stuff available and where do we put it. So we're only about 10 years late, but we are working on our new YouTube channel. And so we're launching about a film a week right now. And so I launched one today, 3 times, 2 times incorrectly and 1 time correctly. And we launched Dubai actually today.
Yep.
And so Dubai on the Fly, Jungle Angler from Bolivia is up. The Arctic is up. But yeah, we're going to continue to launch a movie every week, unless we forget. But we'll have a movie up until we get through the whole library. And then we'll just continue to add films there. And I think, yeah, YouTube's always been an interesting one for me. I didn't really, YouTube has never really felt like it was, I don't know the right way to explain it, but it doesn't, I guess I've just never really been into that as a platform. I think what's changed is watching like my daughter, um, who's, if she's going to jump on and she's going to like, wants to learn about something or watch something, she'll jump on TV and she's like, oh, YouTube, I'm going to jump on YouTube and watch this thing. You're like, huh, okay. Well, there you go. So we're going to launch stuff on YouTube and see how it goes. Yeah. So so the YouTube channel, but that'll honestly it'd be really exciting. And we just want people to watch stuff and be able to have access to it. I mean, again, we're not trying to monetize it and sell this stuff to everybody. We just want people to be able to see it.
Yeah, I'm for me, I don't have a TV. YouTube is where I am all day, and so just as a viewer, I'm excited to watch them repeatedly. Um, Especially if
Cool.
you keep releasing the same video over and over again on the same day.
Yeah, I'll try to launch it like 3 or 4 times a day, and you can just watch whatever version you'd like.
Just kidding.
No, I think it'll be fun. Again, the library is interesting, right? Because I think um, I get a little cringy when I watch a lot of our early stuff because it's old and it's rough, and I look at it now and go, oh God, I can't believe we did this. I can't believe we did that. Like we could have made this so much better. But no, it'd be fun to get the library up there. Um, the fascinating thing I think right now is looking at the landscape in the angling community, and there are so many young people in the sport right now, and it's incredible and it's awesome. Again, when I was growing up, there wasn't another kid my age that was even into fishing growing up. And now, I mean, I drive around, Bend, Oregon, where I live now, little mountain town, and it's so cool. You see, all these young people ripping around, and they've got skis and a bike and a kayak and a fishing rod, and they're doing all this stuff. They're super fired up about fishing, and it's awesome. There's all this energy, and I'm really excited for, a lot of those folks have no idea who we are, and have never seen any of our stuff. So it'd be nice to make it available so people can see it, and they can kind of tap into some of that old stuff if they want. But
Well, one of the things you'd mentioned a couple of times earlier in the podcast was expenses,
Mm,
and it seemed like you didn't really want to say much about that, but you sort of had to because it was a factor. It is a big factor. The other day, I was um, on my way to photograph wildlife in Yellowstone, and
mm,
um, I someone said I stopped somewhere for food, and the guy was like, "I really want to be a photographer," and
mm.
I remember just thinking, I'm carrying like $800 of memory cards.
Yeah,
You know, it's
yeah,
and those are the types of expenses that just like come out of nowhere, and you know, sort of money is such a factor. What
yeah.
would your recommendations be for folks who want to get into filmmaking, whether fly fishing or not, and how to handle the ridiculous financial burden that can come along with
That
the
can come with
pursuit?
it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good question. It's a complicated question. I think I kind of alluded to this a little bit in the beginning. If you wanna do something, whether it's making movies or whatever you want to do in your life, number one, you need to make a commitment to taking a first step, and you need to do it. And I know that that sounds really easy, but it's actually really hard, um, because you're always going to come up with 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't do something, or maybe you don't think that way, but I think for a lot of people, they think about, oh, well, this part's expensive, or that part's hard, or I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how to do that, or like whatever it is, right? You just got to start. You just got to go for it. There's not a better time in history to make content if that's what you want to do. You can shoot. The cell phone that I'm talking on right now has triple, if not quadruple, the processing power, 10 times the storage in the of the first computer that we used to cut a film. And this camera on this phone can do more than the first 20 cameras we had. Not 20, probably the first 5 or 6 cameras that we had. It can do more. It can shoot variable frame rates. It can shoot all these different things. So if you have a smartphone in your pocket, it has a video camera on it, you have something in your hands that you can start to use, and you can start to apply your vision to it, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think technology is going to come and go. It's always going to change. There's always, you can chase the dragon forever. There's always a better camera, a better this, a better that. But technology is not going to define the most important thing that you have, which is your creativity and the story that you want to tell. If you live in, a place that you don't think is beautiful, you don't think is interesting, this and that, I guarantee you, if you go outside, there's something unique and there's something special about where you live that you can capture uniquely, and you can figure out how to do it creatively, and you can make it look cool. And if there's something that's compelling and there's a story that has value for someone else, you can find it there and you can capture that. Again, it's making media is complicated. There's a lot of different pieces to it. There's all the technical stuff. There's all the lighting, the color correction, the audio, all these things. But you can figure it all out. You can go on YouTube and figure out how to do all of this if you want. If you want to learn how to do something, it's all at your fingertips. And you kind of just have to roll your sleeves up and get after it. Um, I think that honestly, like, you have access to music libraries right now. You can buy tracks for cheap. You can get all kinds of resources, and there's all these things at your fingertips. And I think you just have to start and figure out what story you want to tell. And you're gonna have to, if you want to do it and you want to be good at it and you want to be successful, you're gonna need to get out there and do it a bunch, and you're gonna need to fail a ton. And that's totally cool, and that's totally fine. I've made more stuff where I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's horrible. What were you doing? But all those little things are how you learn. You want to get good at shooting? go shoot. If you want to get good at editing, you got to edit, and you're going to make some just garbage. But you've got to work through that. It's like anything you want to do in life. You want to be an amazing chef. You want to be a painter. You know, what whatever. You gotta just put the time in. You got to get in there, just make some garbage, and be fine with that. Who cares, right? Who cares if what you make is terrible? Whatever, do it, because
Yeah,
that's the only way you're gonna get there.
and then you never know what opportunities could show up after that.
100%. You don't know where life's going to take you. I mean, you have no idea, right? When you start your life, if you're a young person, you have no idea the trajectory of where your life's going to go. But if you've got something you want to do, you just gotta just take the step. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to fail. Cool. Let's try it again.
Right.
And just and don't and look and if you and then the biggest thing too is if you fail and you don't have a success, that's don't be scared and don't be upset by that. Just you just got to keep pushing through it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna fail at another thousand things in my life. That's totally cool. That's fine. Who cares? We're gonna go shoot a bunch of projects this year. We're gonna hustle and we're gonna do the best job that we can. And some of it's not gonna work out, and that's okay.
I have a feeling this YouTube thing's gonna work out.
What if I keep uploading all the content incorrectly at the wrong time?
It's just keeping it in front of people. You know?
No, it'll be fine and it's gonna do great. And again, we're just excited that we can find a good home for this content because I mean, otherwise, that's the other thing too. If you don't have an audience, or if there's not a place to show something, then it doesn't exist, right? And that's the biggest tragedy for any media that you make or anything that you put a lot of time into. If it doesn't exist, then that's a shame,
Yeah.
and that's just terrible.
What's I mean, you just you already said that you're not yet 40, so you're still young in this. What's on the horizon? What's next?
That's a good question. I think it's a really interesting time right now. It's a really fascinating time right now with media. Um, the media landscape is something big's going to happen. I think in a little while. Everything is runs in cycles and courses. There's a lot of content being made. There's a lot of amazing stuff being made. There's some really good film festivals. I don't, which are fantastic, and I think the festivals are a great place for people to put content. I see a void right now.
Excuse
Bless you.
me. That's a good one.
That was good, man. Nice one.
Jeez.
There's a lot of yeah. Geez, Louise, Tim, Tim Fernandez Harden. The there's no, but honestly, I'm drawing this out way too long. I think that there's not a lot of really good platforms. YouTube is probably the best place to go and watch stuff right now. I think TV is in kind of a weird state. Streaming stuff is in kind of a weird state right now too. You look at like Netflix and Hulu and some of these big platforms. I don't think that they're poised or necessarily ready or want a lot of this outdoor content, particularly in like the angling space. So I think what we'll see some more platforms pop up, and I think distribution will change in the next couple of years, which would be great because I think there's a lot of really cool stories to be told. There's a lot of media that we really want to make. I think we probably have 20 films that we want to make right now, and we're really kind of trying to figure out where should that stuff live and where should it go. And maybe YouTube it will be an answer to that. But we're I think we're just going to continue to tell stories about fisheries and people, and I think we're starting to have a little bit. We're going back to having a little bit more fun and goofing around a little bit more. I know we've got some campaigns we're kicking around and some projects we're kicking around that you'll see next year that are, I think they're gonna be pretty hysterical, honestly. So I think we're having more fun now, and we want to go back to that and more the lighthearted content and just having fun, man. I mean, fishing's supposed to be fun. It is. I mean, that's the reward, right? And so I think we want to get back to that.
Yeah, and as a, I mean, we work together, but as someone who loves watching great fly fishing content, um, it's exciting for me to hear that, you know, that approach from you and that there's more fun stuff to come.
Yeah, and we're coming at it hard too right now. I think we slowed down a little bit. I had to, my daughter's about 8 years old now. There was a period of time when, I think we pulled back a little bit. And, when you've got a young one and you're not traveling and you're not doing a lot of that stuff, that's to be expected when your kids are younger. I think, we're at a place right now. I mean, we're coming out of the pandemic. I hate to even bring that up, but that was a little bit of a, kind of an interesting period. We, as you alluded to at the beginning of this, we worked with Meat Eater on DOS Boat for 3 years. And so that was a huge production that took a lot of our time. And we're not producing DOS Boat anymore, unfortunately. But I think we're going to come out of the gate swinging this year, and we're going to be, we're back. We're getting the band back together, and we're coming out hard this next couple of years.
I'm pretty excited.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
well, where can folks go to see and learn more?
Honestly, probably the best place to go to right now if you want to keep track of what we're doing is you can throw Off the Grid Studios into the Google machine and jump over to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and follow us along there. You'll get notifications when we have new content coming out. But that's probably the best place to go at this point in time, because that's where we're gonna have all the libraries, and that's where I would go.
Yeah. And if you're looking to follow on social media, check out Off the Grid Studios on Facebook, Off the Grid
Mm,
Studios with periods in between each word, and the
yeah,
handle on Instagram. And if you're exclusively a Twitter user, there's an Off the Grid Studios account there as well.
yeah, that's right. Social media is still a big thing, right? Did Elon Musk kill Twitter yet, or is Twitter still a big
I
one?
think he's announced a search for a new CEO.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, maybe I should dust off my resume and
That's
cool. Well, no, yeah, I think yeah, follow us on social media. Um, we post any updates that we're going to be doing with new projects. We've got a couple new films. Oh yeah, we've got a new film that's coming out. It's out momentarily too. We've got a film called Jax
oh yeah.
that worked on. Yeah, God, should probably be plugging. Oh, isn't that what we're supposed to be?
Okay,
Damn, that,
suddenly this isn't ending. Oh, hold on.
God, I'm obviously I'm not a very good promoter.
I
Yeah, we have a film.
didn't cross my
We have a
mind either.
yeah. Well, never been good at this kind. So Off the Grid Studios has partnered with Captain Jack Productions, Jaco Lucas from South Africa, who's now living in Texas. Partnered with Jaco to execute his vision for a film called Jax, which is pretty fun. There's a huge list of contributors and really amazing people that worked on that project with Jaco, and we're part of that and proud to be part of that. Um, Again, I'm not going to even get into the names of everybody because it's a really long list, but yeah, that will be premiering and out and about with the IF4 Film Festival, and so probably coming to a theater close to you if you're by a reasonably sized city. And so that'll be kicking off here in 2023, and that's gonna be a rad one. That's a really fun little piece.
Yeah, and that trailer is currently available online. It's if you go to the International Fly Fishing Film Festival's website, they have all the trailers there, including the one for Jax. And it's, um, honestly, this is another one that I'm pretty excited about.
Mhm.
Yako, who's first, you know, got everybody's attention for fly fishing for giant trevally, is now a Jax enthusiast, and that's
Yeah,
the focus of the film.
yeah, it was really cool. I think I love Yako, and it was fun to get to know him over the years and kind of watch his career. And yeah, I've always been fascinated by all that stuff that was going on in the Indian Ocean. Um, I mean, they've been pioneering some crazy stuff there for such a long time. And I've been, since I was, again, a teenager, maybe like 20 years old, first started seeing content coming over from the Seychelles. And I remember when Yako started dropping content about giant trevally, and like, I remember like my jaw hitting the floor and being like, this is a different deal here. Like these fish are like, this is wild. This is wild stuff. And this is a cool film because Yako talks a little bit about his history with giant trevally and kind of that whole side of it. And then when he left the Seychelles and moved to the United States, he shows up and he starts guiding in Texas, and he's looking at all these jacks, right? And I can't even say a jack fishery because jacks are very much kind of looked down upon in American culture, angling culture. And they're seen as a bycatcher, maybe not a trash fish, but they're not a species that people are going after with intent on a regular basis, I would say, right? And so Yako, I think, kind of looked at this scene and was like, wait a minute, these jacks are reminiscent of the GTs from the Indian Ocean. Like these things are awesome. These are wild. Like I'm in. I love this stuff. And so that's kind of the point of his film, is showing kind of the similarities between giant trevally and jacks, and that these fish are here in our backyard. And I think that's what I love the most, is that this is something that everybody can do. Like these are super accessible. They're right here in our backyard, so to speak, in North America. They're very forgiving. They're a great target species. Like I could go on and on about why I think they're a rad fish, but I think that that's kind of cool to have an outsider. We have these amazing resources in this country, in North America, whether that's carp, that were looked down upon for a really long time, or like whatever, right? There's all these cool species. And for some reason, they get poo-pooed, or they're not part of the culture. And so to have an outsider kind of look at it and be like, hey, you know what? These are great. What are you guys doing? You don't like these? Like these are amazing. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, this is a I couldn't agree more. And I remember when Yako moved to Texas and was like, "Hey guys, like what's the deal with these fish?" Yeah, it's great. It gets Yaku's spirit of adventure and the pursuit, but it's also a fish that is fairly accessible. So
Yeah.
it sort of mixes the two. You don't have to spend $20,000 to go find these fish. But
Yeah.
there's the same enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you're learning too, like if you're on your journey, and you've grown up and you've done a ton of trout fishing or something, and you're like, man, I really want to do some saltwater stuff. Like saltwater, I mean, it can be challenging, right? If you think about, man, I remember like when I was young, like getting into saltwater, and holy shit, I mean, I got my ass kicked a lot, and going on like permit trips and stuff, and like I'm like, this is really hard and kind of discouraging at times. And like, if you can go cut your teeth, if you're trying to get the saltwater, you can go cut your teeth and you can catch, jacks for a day. Like you're going to learn a lot,
Yeah.
and you're going to have a lot of shots. You're going to catch a lot of them, and they're going to put you through the paces, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes, which is good because you're going to learn from those mistakes, and that's going to prep you for all the other things that you're going to want to step into as you get better. Because if you're, I mean, let's say that you have aspirations to be a permit angler and to catch some permit in your life. Well, you're going to make it, if those are the first fish you're going after, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you're not going to have a lot of opportunities. So it's going to take a lot of years for you to work through all those mistakes. You could go on a jack trip, and you could be in those things all day long for a couple of days, and you're going to go from not really understanding what the saltwater game is about to kind of wrapping your head around it pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the film. It's pretty good. I'm excited to.
It's
Well,
pretty good.
it is. Um, I'm excited to see how audiences respond.
Yeah.
And be sure to check out that trailer. It's coming soon.
Yeah. And congrats to Yako on the finale of his vision and seeing it through. I think he worked on, he's wanted to make this for a long time. And so it's killer.
Cool.
And it'd be great to be a part of this. Is the first year that we're going to be in the IF4, which is really exciting. I've always, kind of been looking at that festival and we just never had an opportunity to work with them. And so this is gonna be really fun to be a part of it. And yeah, and if you're in the Pacific Northwest, we're gonna show up to as many shows regionally as we can. So I hope we can see you all there if you're in Washington or Oregon or Idaho. We're gonna try to go to a bunch of those shows. So come see us.
Nice. Well, this was great. Thanks for coming on. And
Yeah.
I think this was overdue, and I really enjoyed the conversation. And let's do a bunch more cool things and talk about those later on too.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Tim. Appreciate it, and congrats on all of your success too with the Venturing Angler. And yeah, so and where do we go to hear this podcast? We just go to venturingangler.com.
Yeah, and then wherever you listen to, what do the people always say? Wherever you listen to your favorite, I don't know, it's out there.
Okay, well,
I guess if some.
We completely destroyed the ending to this. So
the funny thing,
like me to, I can bury this podcast ending a little bit deeper and make it a little bit more. I can. There's like one wheel left on it. I can try to knock that one off if you want.
The funny thing is as I was saying that and not trying hard to give a good answer, I was like, oh no, am I missing an opportunity? But then I realized if anyone,
if you're listening. If you've made it this far, in the podcast, send me an email and I'm going to send you a shirt and an apology card, handwritten card saying, I'm sorry you had to listen to this.
No, but if you're this far in the podcast, like, you're not missing anything if I don't tell you where you can listen to it.
Bye.
Thanks, Ari.